Part 42. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 412. The black and white chi on the Suanji chessboard burst out with even more terrifying power. Although the black mist condensed on Xiao Yankai's throne was also extremely powerful, when facing the Suanji chessboard, it was like a grandchild encountering his ancestor, and it was almost impossible to resist the fear from the origin. The retreating trend could not be reversed at all. The black and white chi on the Suanji chessboard were mysterious and unpredictable. One was hard, and the other was soft. The black gas slowly spread and dissipated the black fog blocking the front. The figures of the soldiers and monsters hidden in the black fog could not save the situation of being annihilated no matter how hard they struggled. In the shrill roar, they soon dissipated like clouds and smoke. And the white gas seemed to turn into an unstoppable sharp blade, sweeping everything in front of it. None of those who were blocked could escape the fate of being cut in two. The black fog began to retreat step by step, and finally, even the throne representing Xiao Yankai's origin had cracks. The pain and severe injury from the source made a string of blood flow from the corners of Xiao Yankai's mouth. He curled his hands into claws to defend himself, and the majestic demonic energy could barely resist the surging power. But it was obvious that Xiao Yankai was now at the end of his rope. But he was clearly on the verge of despair. Looking at Nai Chen and the Suanji chessboard in front of him, he laughed inexplicably arrogantly. The blood flowing from the corners of his mouth made the laughter even more chilling. Suanji chessboard, it's really Suanji chessboard. I didn't expect that I could see it with my own eyes in my lifetime. At the beginning, the chess emperor was buried under the thunder, and the Suanji chessboard disappeared with it. Someone said that if you want to get the chessboard, you have to find the chess emperor and defeat him. Now the Suanji chessboard has appeared, which means, someone can actually defeat the chess emperor, ha ha ha. Xiao Yankai's laughter suddenly became extremely crazy, as if with a bit of morbid desire. But at this moment, Nai Chen's figure suddenly flashed. Integrating the mysteries of countless secret books, coupled with the strength of the great emperor, Nai Chen's speed was almost as fast as a sharp shadow, and it was completely impossible to see clearly. In a flash, he had appeared in front of Xiao Yankai. A layer of dark golden light covered his arm, and he turned and moved with his energy in his dantian. All the strength in his body seemed to be concentrated on this arm. Boom! Accompanied by a huge earth-shaking sound, even the air in front of him was torn apart by this punch. Breaking through the air, this fist filled with dazzling golden light seemed to contain a terrifying force that could destroy cities and shake mountains. And this powerful punch, without any obstruction, directly broke the black fog and hit Xiao Yankai hard. This punch was really too strong. The fierce wind blew around, accompanied by the whistling sound of the wind. This extremely terrifying force directly wrapped up Xiao Yankai's body and threw him out fiercely. Bang! The dark figure fell directly on the throne made of bones. The entire throne was smashed to pieces, and even the extremely solid wall was shattered under the violent impact. The spider web-like cracks on the wall were enough to show how terrifying this blow was. Even Xiao Yankai's limbs were embedded in the wall. At this moment, the black fog on the Luosheng Hall completely dissipated, and those demon cultivators finally escaped death. Looking at the scene in front of them, they fell into deathly silence, dumbfounded and even unable to speak. The large amount of blood flowing from his face even flowed onto Xiao Yankai's clothes. Even the black hair was stained with blood, and the long hair hung down, messy. The head was covered by long hair, and the head was deeply drooped, so they could not see what was happening to Xiao Yankai. They only knew clearly that the demon emperor was defeated. Moreover, the defeat was so thorough. How is it possible? He is not only an emperor, but also so powerful. Everyone looked at Nai Chen again, and their eyes were filled with astonishment and fear, and they were even so frightened that they wanted to escape directly from here. Chen strength far exceeded their imagination. In any case, they did not expect that Xiao Yankai would actually be defeated. After all, he was respected as the demon emperor and was almost revered and feared by the demon sects in the world, and became a synonym for austerity and death. Whether it was a demon cultivator or a righteous cultivator, they were all deeply afraid of Xiao Yankai's existence, and even the emperors did not dare to provoke him. There was even a rumor that even when facing the Qingyu Queen, the demon emperor was also able to fight. But today, Xiao Yankai was defeated by Chen, who was a young disciple of the demon sect a year ago and is now only a deacon disciple in Tianyun Hall. More importantly, the black and white chessboard floating next to Chen is actually the Suanji chessboard. He once played chess against the sky and was fearless of heaven and earth. The name of Xiao Wang naturally left a strong mark in the history of Lanchuan continent. For Luosheng Hall, Xiao Wang's existence is even more transcendent. He is a belief, even a totem-like existence. In addition to the endless admiration for Xiao Wang, Luosheng Hall has tried its best to find the whereabouts of the Suanji chessboard many times over the years. But no matter what, they couldn't find even a trace. They never thought that the Suanji chessboard would fall into Chen's hands. Moreover, he could actually burst out such a terrifying force. Not only is he at the level of the great emperor, his strength is already at the top of the great emperors in Lanchuan continent. He may even be able to fight against the empress. Looking at Chen, a horrified voice echoed in the hall. For this sentence, all the demon cultivators obviously thought the same. Being able to defeat the demon emperor without even paying a single wound, Chen's strength was far beyond their cognition. Oh no, if he wants to attack us, won't everyone die here? Suddenly, a demon cultivator realized in horror. At the same time, the demon cultivators who were extremely arrogant not long ago actually retreated in unison. However, even though the area of Luosheng Hall was large, there were no more ways to retreat. After a while, the walls behind them were already solid. No, I want to escape, I can't wait any longer, otherwise everyone will die here. Suddenly, a skinny old man shouted in horror as if he was crazy. Then, he actually ran out from among the many demon cultivators, fleeing outside in terror. But at this moment, puff! A black mist suddenly turned into a spear. The extremely sharp spear broke through the air and pierced through his body in an instant. The skinny old man opened his bloodshot eyes, and before he could even say a word, he fell down dejectedly and fell into a pool of blood. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 413. Bloodbat old demon died just like that. Looking at the skinny old man lying in a pool of blood on the ground, the demon cultivators seemed to be under great bombardment and shock. Bloodbat old demon is one of the elders with high strength and status in Luosheng Hall. Even in front of the demon emperor, he originally had a high status. Blood demon Dafa can absorb the bodies of others for his own use. Such an extremely evil technique makes Bloodbat old demon deeply respected, and his strength is extremely powerful and weird. But the demon cultivators never thought that he would fall in a pool of blood and die so easily. That spear. But suddenly, many people quickly saw the problem with the spear. This spear condensed by the dense demonic energy is obviously not the killer ordered by Chen. That is to say. In just a moment, all eyes looked at the wall that Xiao Yankai had just hit. But soon they found that Xiao Yankai, whose limbs were deeply embedded in the wall just now, slowly broke free and walked down again. Although his steps seemed a little staggering and weak, his eyes looking at the old demon of Bloodbat were full of indifference and anger. Running away from the battlefield, haha, in my Luosheng Hall, there are still people who dare to do such a thing. The voice was mixed with chilling majesty, and it was not even possible to tell that Xiao Yankai had just been seriously injured. Looking at the body of the old demon of Bloodbat lying on the ground, the demon cultivators couldn't help but feel a shudder in their hearts. Thinking back, they seemed to have the idea of escaping just now, and they were so scared that they didn't even dare to look at the figure of the demon emperor. They didn't know whether they should be happy or afraid that Xiao Yankai stood up again. They could only curl up in the corner. This group of demon cultivators, who were once notorious, didn't dare to say a word at this moment. They even lowered their heads, as if they were afraid that they would be noticed. After all, there were two great emperors present. Even if they were targeted by anyone, it would only take a moment to destroy them. Nai Chen. At this moment, Xiao Yankai, whose clothes were still stained with blood, spoke coldly through his hair that had drooped down to cover his face. Although his steps were shaky, he approached Nai Chen step by step. The thick demonic energy on his body continued to flow out like water. In addition, his face was completely invisible, and he was covered in blood, which made Aolan pull Nai Chen's sleeves in fear. "Don't let him get closer, just in case." Nai Chen also showed a trace of doubt, but did not make any move for the time being, just watching Xiao Yankai's figure approaching step by step. Even though his steps were very staggering and he walked slowly, Xiao Yankai finally came to Nai Chen. He slowly raised his hand. The blow that Nai Chen had just made was obviously extremely powerful. So even Xiao Yankai's hands were now flowing with thick blood. Raising his palm, his speed suddenly increased a bit, and he came towards Nai Chen. "No, be careful." Aolan, who had just relaxed a little bit of vigilance, suddenly felt a tremor in her heart. She also didn't expect that Xiao Yankai, who was so weak, would suddenly attack. She hurriedly tried to remind Nai Chen, but found that it was completely too late. Xiao Yankai was too close at this moment, and Nai Chen didn't make any moves at all. At this moment, Xiao Yankai's hand had suddenly arrived, and even Aolan didn't have time to stop him. Oh no! Aolan knew that the battle between the emperors was extremely fierce, and the victory or defeat was often in an instant. Just now, although Nai Chen defeated Xiao Yankai with a crushing momentum, it was almost very easy. But if he was accidentally attacked and seriously injured, the situation might be completely reversed. More importantly, Luosheng Hall is the base camp of their demon section, although the surrounding demon cultivators have not taken action for the time being. But once there is a chance, they will definitely wait for the opportunity to move. And she and Nai Chen went deep into the enemy's lair, with no way out. If Nai Chen was successfully attacked by surprise, it would be like falling into a dragon's den and a tiger's lair, and there would be no support at all. Oops! Ao Ian's face turned pale, and she wanted to remind or stop it, but it was too late. Looking at the scene in front of her, her heart seemed to tremble slightly. But just when Aolan had thought of the possible worst outcome, she suddenly realized that she had guessed wrong. Unlike herself, facing Xiao Yankai's approach, Nai Chen did not show any vigilance at all. And similarly, Xiao Yankai's hand was not rushing towards Nai Chen at all. He had no intention of attacking at all. Suddenly stretched out his hand, but what he did was just pa. The letter in Nai Chen's hand was taken away directly by Xiao Yankai. He just wanted to take the letter. Aolan was already a little stupid in the place, completely surprised by the scene in front of her. And then, something that surprised her even more continued to happen. "I accept this letter. Since you are delivering the letter on behalf of the Empress, I will agree to whatever is written in it." Lifting his hair, Xiao Yankai's dashing and even handsome face was revealed. Although a stream of blood flowed from his forehead, it was enough to show that he looked quite serious and had completely lost his murderous intent. Not only that, the look he gave Nai Chen was full of admiration. After looking at the contents of the letter, Xiao Yankai quickly raised his head. Suddenly, he patted Nai Chen's shoulder fiercely. "So the Empress will hold a meeting in 3 days. I understand. Even if I didn't plan to go originally, I will definitely go this time for brother Nai Chen's sake. However, Please teach me more about chess in the future, and tell me how you defeated the chess emperor Xiao Wang. Ha ha ha, after all, it's not easy to meet a confidant like you. Xiao Yankai patted Nai Chen's shoulder and laughed out loud. That laughter was bold and unrestrained, and there was no hostility at all. Ha ha ha. For a moment, the huge Luosheng hall seemed to be echoing with this laughter. Huh? What's going on? Aolan was completely dumbfounded. He never expected that Xiao Yankai would change so much. And the previous second, wasn't he still a demon emperor who hated those who betrayed the demon sect and was full of murderous intent? How could his expression change faster than turning a page of a book? If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't even believe that this was a person. This is too outrageous. Is this a man? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 414. That's what a man is. Nai Chen smiled at Aolan. Xiao Yankai's true character can be seen from the fact that he regards Xiao Wang as his master. As long as there is a person who is stronger than him, or even more arrogant than him, Xiao Yankai will completely change his attitude. However, looking at his hearty laughter, as if he had regarded himself as a confidant, even Nai Chen did not expect that he would change so much. Since I ascended the throne of the Demon Emperor, I have never lost a battle. I didn't expect that I would lose here today, and it was so easy. I surrendered in this battle today. Not only will I go to the meeting convened by the Empress in person, but I will also make you my friend. After wiping the blood off his forehead, Xiao Yankai's attitude has changed 360 degrees. In his eyes, there are only two kinds of people. One is the person who cannot defeat him and is not worth looking at. For such people, even if they are elders under his command, Xiao Yankai will not care about their life or death at all. He even didn't mind wiping them out like trampling ants. The other kind of person is the first person who can make him look at her in the eye. The Empress is half, because even Xiao Yankai has a certain degree of awe for the strength of the Empress King Yu. But because he has never fought and has not been defeated by the Empress herself, Xiao Yankai does not really agree with Chu Qingyu. As the first person to beat him up, Nai Chen has completely won Xiao Yankai's recognition. Of course, what made him change so drastically is the mysterious chessboard in Nai Chen's hand. But brother Nai Chen, if you have time, you must tell me how you defeated the chess emperor Xiao Wang. At that time, were you holding the black or white pieces? What method did you use to resist his attack in the middle? What kind of layout did you use at the end? One by one, the questions were like a string of cannons, and Nai Chen even thought that Xiao Yankai had become a chatterbox. But no matter what, I'm determined to make you my friend. If you have time, please play a game with me. I don't care even if I lose miserably. But soon, Xiao Yankai's voice changed a little, and he shook hands with Nai Chen. It was obvious that he was very serious about the last sentence, and there was no joking at all. Well, don't worry, if I have time, it's not impossible for me to review the game between Xiao Wang and me. After all, I don't have many chess friends. Nai Chen smiled faintly. As early as when he entered Luosheng Hall, he felt that Xiao Yankai's personality seemed to be different from what he seemed on the surface. Now it seems that this demon emperor's temperament is indeed somewhat unique. For a moment, he even felt that the effort he put into delivering a letter seemed to have gained a little fanboy. Moreover, he is over 1,000 years old. He used to be arrogant, but now he is quite fanatical. Just accept the letter. My mission is completed, so I will leave first. Without the intention of staying to reminisce about the past, Nai Chen waved his hand. Seeing that Xiao Yankai was covered in blood, but didn't seem to be seriously injured, he turned around and left. Brother Nai is leaving, why don't you come to see him off? In a flash, Xiao Yankaiu, who was very enthusiastic just now, turned around, and his indifferent eyes made the demon cultivators tremble all over. They were already a little confused. Just now, didn't Nai Chen fight a fierce battle with the demon emperor, killing the sky and the earth, and even severely injuring the demon emperor? How come in just a short while, the two of them seem to have become friends? No, compared to the word friend, their own demon emperor seems more like a follower. The demon cultivators were a little dumbfounded, and obviously they didn't expect things to develop into this situation. But Xiao Yankai's attitude towards them was obviously different from when he faced Nai Chen. The demon cultivators had no doubt that if they did not take any action, the demon emperor might explode in anger in the next moment, and their fate might even be as miserable as that of the old demon of the blood bat. Suddenly, the demon cultivators did not dare to hesitate anymore. Even though they hated Nai Chen as a traitor of the demon sect, they did not dare to say anything extra. We will follow the demon emperor to send off fellow deist Nai Chen. Looking at each other, finally, under the leadership of a fat elder, the demon cultivators did not dare to waste any more time. They had to take a step forward and bowed deeply to Nai Chen. The demon sect and the righteous sect had countless grievances and origins. Even when facing the great emperors of the righteous sect, they had never surrendered like this. But at this moment, the demon cultivators had no choice at all. Even the changes of their own demon emperor were completely reversed, so what room did they have to resist? Yes. Nai Chen nodded, and Aolan beside him quickly understood. In the golden light, it turned into a dragon. Riding on the dragon's body, a man and a dragon rose to the sky, leaving only the sharp wind pressure drifting in all directions. That little girl is actually a dragon. And the aura of this bloodline is even far superior to the purity of the Dragon King. At this moment, many demon cultivators who had already been shocked were once again stunned. They did not expect that someone could actually make the Dragon clan surrender. And what frightened them the most was the terrifying bloodline that they had never seen on Aolan. This bloodline. Staring at the sky, even Xiao Yankai was stunned for a long time. His cultivation level is far superior to other demon cultivators, and he knows Aoian's bloodline countless times better than these people. It is precisely because of this that Xiao Yankai's shock is far greater than theirs. He can clearly feel the terrifying purity of the dragon blood in Aoian's body. It is no exaggeration to say that it can even be compared with the ancient dragon ancestors. And with such pure bloodline, there is probably no dragon in the existing dragons in Lanchuan continent that can reach 1/10 of her purity. It is enough to see how terrifying Aoian's bloodline is. This is definitely not a coincidence. Mysterious chessboard, the atavistic Dragon King, how many secrets are hidden in him? Xiao Yankai showed such curiosity and incredible color for the first time. There was even a hint of admiration in his eyes that he had never seen before. At this moment, he didn't even feel wronged for today's defeat. Because until now, he couldn't imagine how to defeat Nai Chen. This person was the first time he felt that he seemed to be unable to overcome. It was also the first time that he felt awe. Riding the dragon, Nai Chen enjoyed the cool evening breeze and slowly flew towards the direction of Tianyun Palace. All the letters had been delivered, and there were only 2 days left before the Empress convened the meeting. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 415. In the morning, Chu Qingyu, who got up early, sat by the bed and fell into a moment of contemplation. Because she was a little worried about Nai Chen's safety yesterday, she had been concentrating her spiritual consciousness on Luosheng Hall. But she could clearly feel that Nai Chen not only delivered the letter to Xiao Yankaiu, but also beat him with his fists. Xiao Yankaiu would be defeated so badly? Even she didn't expect this. Tianyun Hall has clear rewards and punishments. Even ordinary disciples who complete difficult tasks will have quite good rewards. Nai Chen should be rewarded for being able to beat up the demon emperor Xiao Yang. But what should be the reward? Chu Qingyu couldn't help but fall into contemplation. After all, his things are mine, and there is no need to search for magic weapons, so what should I give? After thinking for a long time, she couldn't think of a suitable reward, but suddenly, she had a great idea. Although Nai Chen's weakness has been greatly improved after entering the realm of the great emperor. But for men, a timely gas station is still quite important. But wouldn't it be a bit too embarrassing to give that thing? Wouldn't it make this emperor look very? Chu Qingyu was obviously a little hesitant, and felt ashamed for the thought just now. But after fighting with each other in her heart for a long time, she suddenly remembered that she would announce that thing to the world the day after tomorrow. She finally made up her mind and went out of the hall. Strange, why is the Empress planning to leave at this time? Seeing that the Empress got up so early, it seemed that she wanted to leave Tianyun Hall. Elder Wang, who happened to pass by, was puzzled and thought that something big had happened, and hurriedly stepped forward to ask. Empress, where are you going to get up so early? This emperor is going to the East China Sea. Chu Qingyu answered coldly. East China Sea? The Empress has no connection with the East China Sea, why is she going to the East China Sea? Ahem, this. Speaking of this, Chu Qingyu obviously hesitated for a moment before saying. This Empress is going to catch some of the freshest ingredients to make soup. For example, some oysters and sea cucumbers. Oysters. Elder Wang was a little stunned. Apart from that use, few people should use oysters to make soup. The Empress is not a man, what does she want oysters for? No more talking, it's getting late, I have to go quickly. But it seems that she is unwilling to talk to him anymore. Chu Qingyu turned around coldly and flew away directly. It's just. Although she acted very cold and arrogant. Elder Wang could clearly see that during the conversation just now, the Empress seemed to remember something, and her cheeks were slightly red. Especially when she mentioned why she wanted to make oyster soup, the Empress actually found a little panic for a moment. Even the usual cold and arrogant feeling could not be concealed. What on earth is the Empress going to do? Could it be related to Nai Chen? At this moment, Elder Wang was completely dumbfounded. After a while, Nai Chen returned to Tianyun Hall. Strange, where is the Empress? Nai Chen couldn't find her in the bedroom and the hall, and he couldn't help but feel a little confused. In the past, the Empress rarely left Tianyun Hall, let alone at this time. Could it be that something happened? Forget it, since the Empress is not here, let's train them for a while. Anyway, Chu Qingyu was not here, and Nai Chen had nothing to do, so he gathered the male disciples of Tianyun Hall who were eager to become stronger for training. They also had to retain sufficient energy to deal with the conference the day after tomorrow, so the intensity of Nai Chen's training today was not that high. In the whole day, they only ran 30,000 meters in total. But when it was almost sunset, Nai Chen clearly felt that the eyes of these disciples were all focused on the distance, as if they were waiting to find something. These disciples seemed absent-minded at the beginning of the training, but had other purposes. Nai Chen frowned slightly and followed them to look into the distance. Just then, accompanied by the afterglow of the setting sun, a figure finally approached slowly. When they saw it clearly, the disciples were stunned for a moment. The Empress is really here. That cool, graceful, and flawless figure could not be anyone else. Sure enough, it was exactly as they guessed. When senior brother Nai was there, the Empress would definitely come in person, but when Nai Chen was not there, the Empress had no interest in their training at all. Today, senior brother Nai returned to Tianyun Hall, and the Empress not only came to inspect again, but even seemed to have a very beautiful wooden box in her hand. Take this and drink it first. The things inside are what I just caught and cooked in the East China Sea this morning. The light step seemed to have no hesitation at all, and went straight through the disciples and came to Nai Chen. Chu Qingyu handed the wooden box to Nai Chen, and her voice was actually slightly shy. Ahem, my wife, you are so considerate. Nai Chen couldn't help but feel a little warm in his heart. No wonder the Empress disappeared early this morning, it turned out to be to prepare this thing. Even though he knew the Empress's cooking skills, Nai Chen still smiled and opened the wooden box. When he opened the box, everyone immediately saw the carefully cooked thick soup in the box. Although the soup looked colorful and ferocious, it looked like a devil's face. But in the soup, they could clearly see oysters, sea cucumbers, and chestnuts. Especially oysters, not only were there a lot of them, but they were bigger than each other. The disciples were dumbfounded. Perhaps fewer people knew about the effects of sea cucumbers and chestnuts, but almost no male disciples didn't know the effects of oysters, which were nicknamed gas stations. Why did the Empress send senior brother Nai a soup with so many oysters? Chu Qingyu's back was obviously a bit cold and majestic when she left, but when she saw the big oysters in Nai Chen's bowl, the disciples were completely dumbfounded. The oysters are quite big, but they are a bit poisonous. After eating a big oyster, Nai Chen's mouth soon bled. But the Empress actually prepared oysters early in the morning. Nai Chen couldn't help but smile slightly. His wife was so thoughtful, which made him feel a little happy. Thinking of this, he looked at the disciples of Tianyun Hall. Nai Chen soon discovered that these disciples were all crying and felt like they had lost all hope in life. It's outrageous. The disciples suddenly felt that the pain they endured in one day of training would take them many years to heal their wounded hearts. They had tried to question this fact many times. But after 4 days of training, they finally found it clearly. The Empress is really a double standard. Moreover, she is only a double standard for senior brother Nai. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 416. The conference is about to be held, and all sects will go to Tianyun Hall tomorrow. It was just morning when the disciples and elders on the mountain began to prepare. Arrange disciples to patrol, check the normality or abnormality of the formation, and also arrange various things. In today's world, the only force that is qualified to hold a conference and call on all sects in the world to participate is Tianyun Hall. Therefore, this conference made the disciples of Tianyun Hall feel extremely honored from the bottom of their hearts. There is the pride of being a member of Tianyun Hall, and there is also a solemn admiration for the Empress. Nai Chen was about to go out, but as soon as he opened the door, he saw Aolan standing outside the door. Good morning. Seeing Nai Chen, Aolan immediately raised his head, greeted with a smile, and even his little tail shook gently. Obviously, he has been waiting here for a while. Why are you here? Nai Chen couldn't help but be curious. After all, Aolan is a real lazy dragon. If she had nothing to do in the past, she would not want to get up even if the sun was shining on her butt. She got up so early today and waited for him outside. Obviously, something was wrong. There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. This little guy must have some little calculations in his mind. I don't know if it's because of the insight and cultivation of entering the realm of the Emperor. Nai Chen's eyes made Aolan feel as if she was seen through. With a smile, she had to tell the truth. He, didn't you promise to make me a reward of 1 fish and 3 dishes yesterday? Actually, I want to eat fish. Aolan shook her tail a little embarrassedly. This sentence almost made Nai Chen laugh. How can you resist eating so early in the morning? Looking at Aolan, who tried his best to restrain himself, but was obviously greedy, Nai Chen could almost imagine how much pain Aolan had last night. Maybe, the saliva from the dream will drip onto the pillow. Such a greedy dragon, you can't find it anywhere. Okay, then I'll fulfill my promise and make one for you. Even though no one would eat a big meal in the early morning, Nai Chen still agreed with a smile. If Aolan was allowed to be greedy for another morning, she might be so greedy that she would start looking for stones to eat. Great. Hearing this, Ao Ian's eyes were suddenly a little bright with excitement. Her eyes were bright and she was so happy that she was on tiptoe, and she had completely forgotten that she was trapped in the depths of the imperial mausoleum with the Saint of Flowers not long ago. This character of not remembering any grudges is really a little different from other dragons. After arranging Aolan to sit next to him and wait, Nai Chen also came to the kitchen and took a good golden carp from the system mall. One fish, 3 ways to cook it. This unique method from Blue Star is the first of its kind in Lanchuan continent. 3 stoves appeared, and Nai Chen also cut the golden carp into 3 parts, the head, the body, and the tail. Not long after, the sound of cooking began, accompanied by the extremely refreshing aroma that spread all around. In addition to the unique method, Nai Chen also integrated spiritual energy into the cooking process. The spiritual energy of the great emperor has condensed the most refined and rich spiritual energy between heaven and earth. In the infiltration of spiritual energy, any food will be improved by leaps and bounds, not to mention the extremely precious golden carp. For a while, the fragrant aroma spread completely from the kitchen. Aolan, who was originally sitting at the table, trying his best to control his mind, couldn't help it. Looking at the direction of the fragrance, his eyes were a little straight. Slurp. No, I'm the Dragon King, how can I be as greedy as a child? Just bear with it for a while, just bear with it for a while. Clenching his fists tightly, Aolan kept trying to convince himself. Soon, accompanied by a strong aroma, Nai Chen finally finished cooking one fish in 3 ways. Served in a large plate, looking at the scene on the plate, Nai Chen couldn't help but feel a little appetite. It's done, get ready to eat. After saying it loudly in the kitchen, Nai Chen walked out. The fish in the plate was still filled with the warmth of oil and the strong aroma of just out of the pot. But when he walked out of the kitchen, Nai Chen clearly saw that Aolan, who was sitting at the table, had his eyes wide open. And, the crystal saliva at the corner of his mouth flowed unconsciously, and it was about to drip on the table. Nai Chen suddenly felt a burst of laughter and tears. I have seen greedy children, but it is rare to see someone as greedy as Aolan. If I take Aolan outside, who would believe her identity as the Dragon King? Think about those sects that treasured dragon saliva. If they knew that Aolan existed, they would probably ask her to return to the sect immediately and feed her carp every day to make her drool. You can eat now. Pay attention to your image, otherwise how will you get married when you grow up? Putting a plate of carp of different colors on the table, Nai Chen smiled helplessly and picked up a piece of paper to wipe the crystal saliva from the corners of Ao Ian's mouth. At this moment, Aolan, who had been a little dazed just now, finally came back to her senses. Looking at the plate of carp on the table, her eyes suddenly lit up. Not only was the smell of the carp so fragrant that it was refreshing, but the appearance of this carp was also ridiculously beautiful. The head is dark red with braised sauce, while the steamed fish body is its original color. With the fried golden fish tail, the whole carp is divided into 3 completely different colors, which complement each other. It is so beautiful that it seems not to be food at all, but more like a carefully crafted work of art. For a moment, Aolan even felt reluctant to destroy it. But like a glutton scratching her stomach repeatedly, she soon couldn't bear it anymore. Being respectful is worse than obeying, then I'll start. With a slurping sound, Aolan picked up the chopsticks, and the speed of her hands seemed to be as fast as lightning. Delicious. Crackling, so fragrant. In the vague voice, it was impossible to tell Ao Ian's praise. The braised fish head was completely soaked with the taste of the soup, and the fish skin was smooth and soft, with an excellent taste like jelly. On Blue Star, carp is rarely steamed. but the quality of the golden carp is completely different. The steamed fish body perfectly retains the aroma of the carp. In addition to the tender texture and extremely fragrant taste, there is no fishy smell at all. As for the fish tail, it is so delicious that Aolan almost shouted out in excitement. The fried golden fish tail is crispy and fragrant. The moment it is eaten, it makes a crackling sound, and the aroma fills the entire mouth. The three flavors almost make Aolan completely immersed in them, leaving endless aftertastes. He didn't even notice that at this moment, a figure was quietly approaching from outside the house. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 417. Delicious, so delicious. Aoian's taste buds seemed to have been completely conquered by this fish. Not only did he eat the whole fish cleanly, but he even didn't spare the fish bones. Those delicate little hands were already stained a little greasy. After devouring everything and licking the plate, it seemed that they finally came back to their senses. It's so delicious, but... Reminiscent of the delicious aroma, Aolan couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. One fish and 3 meals is indeed quite delicious, but it has an extremely serious problem, and that is, there's simply not enough to eat. The overly delicious taste constantly stimulates the taste buds, even making Aolan. It feels like my stomach is empty, as if I haven't eaten anything just now. His big watery eyes stared at Nai-chan eagerly. After hesitating for a long time, Aolan finally couldn't help but speak. Yua, it's so delicious, it's not enough. At any rate, I have been trapped in the earth spirit for half a month, otherwise you can make another one for me. Aoian's eyes were full of longing. One is enough, let's talk about the rest later. Nai-chan took the plate back with an angry smile. Nowadays, there are plenty of skill points, and there is no shortage of golden scaled carps. But according to Aoian's way of eating, he was afraid that one day he would eat himself into a dragon pig, and how would he be able to fly into the sky? But this is really cruel to the dragon. You can only eat one piece of such a delicious fish, which is simply like you human lovers taking off their clothes halfway and then suddenly putting them on again. Aolan expresses resistance in a wonderful metaphor. No, as your contractual master, I still have to find a way to avoid feeding you into a little fat pig. Nai-chan refused very decisively. No, I'm still very thin now. Just make another one, just one. Seeing that the fish was about to fly away from him, Aolan tried to hold it back and hugged Nai-chan's legs. It is said that the most intolerable thing for human men is the coquettishness of cute girls. Aolan immediately tried to use this powerful trump card. Hugging Nai-chan's legs tightly, a pitiful feeling flashed in his eyes. The furry dragon tail swayed slowly and hooked Nai-chan's legs from time to time. Handsome brother Nai-chan, isn't it allowed to be cute? Aoian's tone became quite soft and cute. Do you think being cute can disturb my Taoist mind? However, Nai-chan flicked Aoian's little head and was obviously not affected. After all, he had just experienced the soft and cute baptism of the little empress in the underworld. Even if Aolan did show the dragon lady's cuteness to the fullest, there was no way to affect him. Damn it, I clearly remember that you are an LSP, how come your heart suddenly becomes so determined? Aolan obviously did not expect this situation and was completely at his wit's end. Carp, my carp. At this moment, she could not think of any way to save the carp. At this moment, the wooden door suddenly became loose and creaked. Although the sound was not loud, it actually made Aolan and Nai-chan shake at the same time. Because the door opened, and the person who walked in was Empress King Yu. Only now did Aolan recall why she felt strange when she was holding Nai-chan, as if someone was watching her secretly. It turned out that the door to the room had been opened just a crack, and the Empress had been looking outside for who knows how long. It's finished, it's completely finished. Aolan felt as if there was a terrifying thunderbolt in his heart. After all, he didn't even notice the Empress's problem outside just now. She even acted coquettishly with Nai Chen and hooked Nai Chen's legs with her dragon's tail. Anyone who saw the scene would not panic Aolan, but the Empress was different. In addition to the extremely ambiguous relationship between the Empress and Nai Chen that almost no one knew about, she knew very well that the Empress, she was a jealous maniac. She was really jealous. She felt that it was even possible for Chu Qingyu to draw her sword and kill Tianyun Palace. Aolan could no longer imagine what would happen to her if the Empress saw the scene just now. Empress, I really didn't mean it. It was just an accident. Ao Ian's voice was extremely low, even slightly trembling, as she hurriedly tried to explain. But she soon noticed that the situation seemed completely different from what she had imagined. At this moment, Chu Qingyu walked into the house, but she did not target Aolan, but sniffed around the house with interest. Soon, a little light seemed to flash in his eyes. It smells so good. Chu Qingyu couldn't help but sigh. She seemed to be in a pretty good mood. Aolan was a little dumbfounded. This is different from what I thought. No, based on what I have observed over a long period of time, the Empress is obviously a jealous jar full of jealousy, and she gets jealous very easily. But now, how could this happen? Honey, you're here. Nai Chen also hesitated for a moment, but soon smiled. Do you think it smells good? This is the taste of the golden scaled carp I made for Aolan just now. How about I make one for you too? Humph, I have to admit that it tastes pretty good. If that's the case, then, I'll try it reluctantly. Chu Qingyu snorted. But this cute snort made Nai Chen laugh. There is only Aolan next to you, why are you so arrogant? Arrogant, how is it possible? This emperor has nothing to do with arrogance. I am just telling the truth. Yes, that's it. As if she was exposed, Chu Qingyu explained in a panic. I don't believe you. Nai Chen had expected Chu Qingyu's arrogance. However, it was really good to show the Empress a way to eat one fish in 3 ways. Nai Chen went to the kitchen. After a while, the sound of cooking and the extremely rich aroma drifted out. Chu Qingyu sat on the chair and waited, exuding a bit of coolness. And, a little bit of expectation that was almost undetectable. It seemed that there was no difference from the past. But Aolan standing aside couldn't help feeling more flustered. She could clearly feel a wave of uneasiness in her heart. After all, this was too abnormal. If the Empress had behaved differently, it would be fine, but with her jealous personality, it's really abnormal for her to remain calm as usual. The calm surface of the sea often hides more turbulent waves. At this moment, Aolan was so scared that even his tail could not help but curl up slightly. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 418. After a while, the second golden carp was freshly baked. But for some reason, Nai Chen seemed to have spent a lot more time cooking this fish than the previous one. When the carp was placed on the table, it was immediately filled with fragrance. 3 completely different aromas mixed together and permeated the air. This is actually a golden carp. Where did you get it from? Looking at the golden carp in front of her, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but reveal a little surprise. After hearing the name of the golden carp from Nai Chen before, she just thought that the name of a certain dish happened to be the same as this precious species that existed in ancient times. But she didn't expect that what Nai Chen made was actually the golden carp. The golden carp is extremely precious and rare. For the dragon clan, the golden carp has a powerful effect that can enhance their strength and even directly purify their ancestral bloodline. Therefore, in the eyes of the dragon clan, the golden carp is an extremely precious and supreme treasure. Even for human cultivators, the value of the golden carp is extremely rare. Eating something precious now as an ordinary meal is enough to make any cultivator who knows its value dumbfounded. I thought of another way to get it. My wife, don't worry about it. Just taste it first. Nai-Chen smiled and fooled him. Hearing this answer, Chu Qingyu didn't ask too much and nodded slightly. The head, body, and tail of a carp can be divided into 3 ways. Even Chu Qingyu felt a little strange. She had never seen it before. But when she looked at Nai-Chen on the side, she picked up the chopsticks and paused for a moment. Picking up a large piece of steamed fish in the middle, Chu Qingyu blew on the fish twice to dissipate some of the heat. For the first bite, she actually picked it up and sent it to Nai-Chen's mouth. Faced with this action, Nai-Chen was stunned for a moment. But looking at Chu Qingyu's slightly cold face, he understood it instantly. The Empress was as cold as ice on the surface, but her inner self had already melted, even with a hint of gentle water. Especially when there was no one else around, the Empress would become even more adorable without her disguise. As for the light bulb Aolan next to her, she was a dragon, not a human. After taking a bite of the steamed fish, Nai-Chen couldn't help but nod with satisfaction. In addition to being amazed at his own cooking skills, the fish that was gently blown by the Empress seemed to have a faint orchid fragrance. Nai-Chen suddenly smiled and whispered in Chu Qingyu's ear. "Wife, did you eat candy today?" Chu Qingyu, "No." "Then why is it so sweet? Even the fish that you blew on seems to be sweet. How is it possible?" "Damn it, don't think that such meaningless love words can disturb this emperor's mind." Chu Qingyu suddenly felt her heart skip a beat. But even though she was tough on the surface, the faint blush on her cheeks clearly expressed her true thoughts. "Oh no, how could I be caught off guard in such a strange place?" Feeling a little flustered, Chu Qingyu tried to think of a way to refute, but she didn't know what to say. Especially when she wanted to learn the romantic love words of Nai-Chen, she found that she couldn't think of any at all. For so long, Chu Qingyu had a question that she couldn't say. Why can Nai-Chen always come up with those weird love words that seem to touch the heart? Even though she is called an empress with extraordinary talent, Chu Qingyu couldn't do this at all. At this moment, in response, Nai-Chen also stretched out his hand and gently broke the golden fish tail, breaking off a piece of the most crispy tail tip. "Wife, try it, this position is the essence of fried fish." Without using chopsticks, Nai-Chen directly took the golden and crispy fish tail in his hand and brought it to Chu Qingyu's mouth. This ambiguous behavior made Chu Qingyu a little embarrassed. She glanced at Aolan and whispered, "This is not good, Aolan is still next to us. What are you afraid of? Aolan is not a human. Besides, my wife, you have never regarded Aolan as an opponent. How could you not blame Aolan when you came in and saw Aolan acting like a spoiled child to me? How did you see that?" Nai-Chen's words made Chu Qingyu panic. She never expected that Nai-Chen would observe so carefully. This unsuccessful idea of jealousy was discovered, which made Chu Qingyu feel ashamed, and her voice trembled slightly. But the conversation between the two of them made Aolan stunned in an instant. Worried that the Empress would turn evil because of jealousy, she was originally panicked for a while. In the end, she never expected that the Empress really didn't mind at all. No, it can't be said that she didn't mind. It's that the Empress didn't think she was a threat at all and never regarded herself as a possible competitor. Although he was relieved, knowing that the Empress would not attack him. But when he came to his senses, Aolan felt that his young heart had suffered a serious trauma. Woo woo woo, the Empress did not regard him as a human being at all. Just as Aolan was feeling sad, the scene in front of him began to become more excessive. Chu Qingyu felt a little ashamed and angry when her jealous thoughts were seen through. "Damn it, I saw through it and still said it out loud, it's so shameful." With a little flutter in her heart, She opened her mouth and bit the golden fish tail. But the real purpose was far more than the fish tail. Chu Qingyu also bit Nai Chen's hand along with the crispy fish tail, leaving a small tooth mark. Wife, you dare to sneak attack me, in this case, don't blame me. As he said, Nai Chen directly broke off another piece of golden fish tail and threw it into his mouth. Instantly, a very pleasant crispy sound came out, which was enough to show how crispy and delicious this fish tail was. You actually took the most crispy part in the chaos, too much. Such a delicious food but only had one bite, and the rest was taken away by Nai Chen. Chu Qingyu stared at Nai Chen with resentment. Fierce. But Nai Chen smiled slightly, more excessive is still to come. How excessive can it be? Chu Qingyu pouted slightly, pretending to be angry. It's too much, so much so that my wife can't eat it all. Nai Chen finished speaking, but he saw 3 colored golden carp flying out and landing on the table. Moreover, there were 10 plates. This is simply discriminatory treatment. It's too much. This is not treating dragons as human beings. Looking at the scene in front of him, Aolan was completely dumbfounded. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 419. Puff. Looking at the 10 freshly baked carps in front of her, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but smile softly. So you've been thinking about this for a long time. Of course, after all, I want to conquer your taste buds as well. Tisk, I want to see what's so delicious about this golden carp. Chu Qingyu snorted and started to eat the other carps. The 10 plates of carp all used the method of one fish in 3 ways, but for some reason, although the method was the same, the taste of each plate was slightly different and each had its own flavor. Eating and eating, even Chu Qingyu couldn't help but flash her eyes slightly, immersed in this boundless deliciousness. This tastes good. This tastes good too. Strange, they are all steamed, but the flavors are slightly different. What weird seasoning did you use? The originally cold Chu Qingyu couldn't help but be a little reserved and tasted it with a little happiness. Even, she was a little shy and picked up a piece of fish and put it into Nai Chen's mouth. The small house was filled with a warm atmosphere. The interaction between the two was so ambiguous that it seemed to warm the whole house. Only Aolan stood alone on the side, as if he was completely ignored. Watching the show of affection was cruel enough, but there were even crueler things. Differential treatment. Nai Chen was afraid of getting fat by only feeding a carp, but when facing the Empress, 10 carps were not enough. Woo, won't the Empress become fat? This is simply a large-scale dragon abuse scene. Aolan did overlook one thing. The great emperor can communicate with the purest spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Even if he does not use spiritual power, there will be a constant flow of spiritual energy injected into the body to improve himself. Therefore, the body of the great emperor can always be kept in the most perfect state, frozen in the most beautiful moment, not to mention the problem of getting fat. But just as Aolan lowered her head pitifully, she suddenly felt a breeze sweeping past her. She raised her head in surprise, and suddenly found that the Empress was holding a plate of golden carp and whispered. Did you eat enough just now? Do you want to eat more? Aolan clearly noticed that on the Empress's beautiful face, there was a faint smile as if ice and snow had melted away. Empress, can you be like this? For a moment, Aolan's eyes froze. She had heard of the reputation of the human emperor, the Qingyu Empress, a long time ago. There was even a rumor among the Dragon clan that the Qingyu Empress was the strongest enemy of the Dragon clan. Such fear is enough to explain the Empress's coldness and terrible strength. Now, although the Empress's coldness and majesty when facing major events in the world remain the same, in some small aspects, there have been subtle changes. As for the reasons that can affect the Empress's changes, Aolan can also clearly guess them. All the changes in the Empress seemed to come from Nai-Chen's subtle influence, from the cruel dog food she gave out time and time again. And the reason for this is probably unknown to almost everyone. Why are you crying? Actually, you have a share of this, so eat more if you want. As long as you can quickly improve your strength and reach the level of the great emperor, you won't have to worry about getting fat. Looking at Ao Ian's tearful look, Nai-Chen couldn't help but smile. Yeah. This sentence completely moved Ao Lan. After nodding firmly, she actually hugged Chu Qingyu's legs. Woo woo woo, Empress sister, I will definitely follow you in the future. Of course, the other little hand also hooked Nai-Chen. For these carp, this Dragon King will take you all over the world. This slightly shameful remark, although Ao Ian's voice was a little small, was extremely sincere. Nai-Chen couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, Ao Lan seemed to have forgotten that the contract between him and Nai-Chen was only for 1 year. Now, it was almost time for the contract. Soon, Ao Lan excitedly joined the army of fish-eaters. And found that compared with his own wolfing down, the Empress's movements were more elegant and cool, but her appetite was not small at all. Count me in. Nai-Chen also joined in. The two of them swept away the 10 plates of golden carp on the table at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the sweet atmosphere, the atmosphere also added a bit of warmth. After a long time, finally, all the golden carp were swept away. Ao Lan patted his non-existent belly with satisfaction. The meeting will be held tomorrow, and Chu Qingyu will have to go back to the main hall to deal with some remaining affairs. She immediately raised her hand and volunteered. I want to escort the Empress back to the main hall. Just you? Forget it, if you want to escort, then escort. Seeing Ao Ian's confident look, Nai-Chen had no choice but to nod his head. Chu Qingyu seemed to look at each other, smiled knowingly, and the two figures, one big and one small, turned and left. The figure of the Empress gradually went away and disappeared from the field of vision. Nai-Chen turned around and looked at the table. Because he felt that it was not enough just now, he made another plate, but this one was left and had no use. Then it should be. Nai-Chen stared at the last plate of golden carp and fell into thought. A sacred place of flowers. Looking at the letter in her hand for tomorrow's Tianyun Palace meeting, the Blossom Saint was hiding in her room, feeling extremely lonely. This dignified saint seems to have experienced loneliness and is pitiful. That's too much. The flower saint sniffed pitifully. Needless to say, Nai-Chen and Qingyu must still be showing off their affection in different ways at this moment. And even Ao Lan betrayed the Single Women's Association, leaving herself alone. This kind of loneliness and the pain of being shown affection is simply the most tragic pain in the world. Huddled in the corner, the poor flower saint even had some tears in her eyes. But at this moment, she suddenly raised her head. And clearly saw that the space in front of him was distorted. And in the space, a beautiful plate emerged. What's on the plate is golden scaled carp cooked using 3 methods at the same time. The rich aroma hit her face, making the flower saint maiden swallow a mouthful of saliva. This is. Her eyes were slightly dazed, and she took the plate in confusion. The space twisted back to its original appearance and disappeared. Looking at the golden scale carp on the plate, I was stunned for a long time. But the flower saint, who was already very aggrieved and pitiful, couldn't help but a smile appeared on her lips after a moment. And that smile is quite warm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 420. Dong, dong, dong. The majestic sound of the Emperor's bell echoed in the sky above the Tianyun Palace. Looking up at the sky solemnly, countless cultivators could faintly see the golden light floating in the air, and the strange scene of hundreds of birds in the sky singing in awe at the same time. The majesty of the emperor can already cause strange phenomena in the world. And along with this strange phenomenon in the world, it also symbolizes another earth-shaking event. Today is the time for the empress to hold a meeting. This day has finally come. In addition to what happened in the imperial mausoleum, I really don't know what the second thing the empress wants to announce to the world is. I heard that this matter is enough to cause the world to be stunned, and I can't help but feel a little curious. Let's go. This bell represents the order of the empress. I believe that other sects will also start to set off, accompanied by waves of discussions. The major sects that were invited gathered from all directions to the top of the Tianyun Palace. Even though the cultivators who came were the highest-ranking sect masters and elders of the major sects, the scene of thousands of sects gathering together at the same time was so grand that it could be described as spectacular. Countless clouds were floating towards the Tianyun Palace under control, and the many cultivators riding the wind above were as dark as the dark clouds before a rainstorm. Yunhe Sect, Tianshan Sect, Xiamen Mountain, Hanshan Cave, Leiyin Temple. Whether it was a third-rate sect or a first-rate sect standing at the top. Under the leadership of the sect masters, these white-haired old men or cultivators who had lived in seclusion for many years all looked solemn. Some were curious, and some were in awe. The only thing they all agreed on was that everyone was looking forward to the meeting held by the Empress today. The Dragon Kings and Elders of the Four Seas Dragon Palace. I didn't expect that even the dragons, who are always arrogant and never want to have any contact with human cultivators, would come here, and the Dragon Kings would come here in person. Master Fenwen, who led the monks in the temple and took the lead in riding the wind, couldn't help but show a trace of astonishment. After all, the relationship between the human race and the dragon race has been quite stiff over the years. For these self-righteous dragons, even the powerful human emperors can't make them feel awe. Over the years, human cultivators who can lead the dragons to go to sea have never been heard of. And today, these dragon kings not only came in person, but also led their dragons, all with awe and awe. Even facing other human cultivators, they were much more respectful. The power of the Queen has already made us feel in awe. We came to attend the conference this time, and naturally we have the heart to submit. The new Dragon King of the South China Sea seemed to have heard Master Fenwen's doubts, and turned around and said, "So, is that so?" This sentence made Master Fenwen stunned for a moment. He didn't observe carefully just now, and only after the Dragon King of the South China Sea spoke did he observe a little more confidently. Master Fenwen could actually feel it clearly. The words of the Dragon King of the South China Sea were full of awe that could never be faked. But at the same time, this awe also carried a bit of deep fear and even fear. In other words, the Dragon Kings of the Three Seas have truly submitted to the Queen. But the real reason for submission is being beaten. When Master Fenwen thought of this, he couldn't help but feel a chill on his back. Although the Queen's power has long been known to the cultivators of the world, but being able to beat the Dragon King, even just thinking about it, can make people feel how terrible it is. Beside the Three Seas Dragon Kings, Aolan, who returned to the West Sea Dragon Palace and led the dragons, was also seen by many people. Many cultivators who were deeply impressed by Nai Chen suddenly realized. The cute little dragon beside Nai Chen before was actually the current West Sea Dragon King. So far, all the current Four Seas Dragon Kings have gathered together and led a group of dragons to the Tianyun Palace. Some dragons did not transform into human form. The huge dragon bodies bowed in awe in the direction of the Tianyun Palace and slowly approached. Such a magnificent scene could not help but make countless cultivators feel uneasy. The Empress defeated the Dragon Kings of the Three Seas, and the Empress's disciple Nai Chen subdued the West Sea Dragon King as a pet. These things, just thinking about it feels outrageous. The waves surged and the breeze blew. Under the blue sky, there were clouds full of cultivators from all directions. Being able to command so many sects at the same time, Let alone in the world today, even if you look at the Lanchuan continent for 1,000 years, I am afraid that only the king or queen can do it. Except for the queen, no one else in the past 1,000 years can have such a powerful power. Dong. The sound of the third emperor bell fell, and even the top of the Tianyun palace was covered with a layer of holy golden light. The monks from all directions gathered, and many sects had already taken a step ahead and slowly landed on the top of the mountain. At this time, a group of black-robed figures attracted the attention of many monks at the same time. When the leading figure took off the black robe on his head, in an instant, countless people's pupils shrank suddenly and their eyes widened in shock. That is, Demon Emperor Xiao Yankaiu. Some people couldn't help but shout out in shock. Because this voice has long been deeply remembered by them. Xiao Yankaiu, who was able to make many demon sects surrender by himself and turned Shura Palace into the #1 demon sect in Lanchuan continent, naturally deserves to be feared by countless righteous cultivators. The shock brought by his appearance here is even greater than that of the 4 sea dragon kings coming here at the same time. I didn't expect that even Xiao Yankaiu would appear here. The demon sects always like to go alone. How could he attend the meeting held by the empress? Could it be? Even Xiao Yankaiu is willing to surrender to the empress. Thinking of this, the onlookers looked at each other, and their hearts seemed to be surging with turbulent waves. They never thought that the dignified demon emperor could actually surrender to Tianyun Palace. The appearance of Xiao Yankaiu was undoubtedly the most shocking thing today. Regardless of whether he really surrendered to the empress, Xiao Yankaiu's arrival and the countless cultivators from all over the world gathered here are enough to prove how terrifyingly fast the development speed of Tianyun Palace was in just this year. Looking up, many cultivators looked towards the depths of Tianyun Palace at the same time. In the misty clouds, the depths of the palace exuded a bit of chill and the awe-inspiring power of the emperor. Faintly, the cultivators of various sects could see a figure in the misty air. She was absolutely beautiful, but so cold and arrogant that people dared not even think of blaspheming her. The World Sect Conference held by Tianyun Palace was about to begin. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 421. Welcome to Tianyun Hall to attend the meeting. I believe everyone has seen the document written by the Empress about the Imperial Mausoleum. Today, in addition to announcing the specific matters of the Imperial Mausoleum and the underworld to the world, the Empress will also announce another thing. Please be patient and wait for the Empress to say. Looking at the major sects that have basically gathered together, facing the many cultivators on the top of the mountain, Elder Wang sank into his dantian and his voice spread in all directions. The major sects who came naturally did not dare to say anything, especially they were extremely curious about the second thing that the Empress was going to announce, which made almost everyone stand in awe and look at Tianyun Hall with expectation. After speaking, Elder Wang respectfully stepped aside. As if sensing something, the eyes of many cultivators gathered in the direction of Tianyun Hall at the same time. They actually saw clearly that the mist in the Tianyun Hall began to slowly dissipate. The flawless outline hidden in it also began to gradually become clear. Finally, as a breeze swept by, the figure behind the clouds and mist was revealed. 3,000 black hair fluttered in the wind, and there was a little light blue extreme coldness in the cold autumn eyes. The skin as smooth as jade was as pure as snow. When the proud beautiful eyes opened slowly, it seemed as if they had been sleeping for 1,000 years, with a bit of longevity and coldness. The long and dense eyelashes raised a perfect arc, and the cherry lips were as pink as blooming cherry petals. There was a bit of beauty in the coldness, and a bit of coldness in the flawlessness. Looking at the scene in front of them, which was like a poem and painting, many cultivators couldn't help but stand there. Even though they had gone through practice and strengthened their minds countless times, they still couldn't control the shaking in their hearts at this time. It is rumored that Empress King Yu ranked second in the Book of Allure, and was the most beautiful in the country. But there are very few people who can really see her beauty. Even those who were lucky enough to come to Tianyun Palace and see the Empress could only see her graceful figure through a layer of mist. For most cultivators, it was the first time to see her in person in Tianyun Palace. Even though they had heard of the beauty of the Book of Allure, the appearance of the Empress still made them feel deeply shocked. Her appearance was stunning, and more importantly, the imperial power that was faintly floating out was even more awe-inspiring. How could the existence of the Empress not make people feel infinite awe? However, many sects noticed a very strange problem. Beside the Empress, there were 12 holy envoys from the 12 Xingluo palaces, and 10 supreme elders including Elder Wang. The cultivation and strength of these people were enough to be recognized by the world, and it was understandable that they were standing beside the Empress to protect her. But why is that guy next to the Empress? Many cultivators clearly saw that among the people guarding the Empress, only one person was in the most awkward position and was closest to the Empress. That person was Nai Chen. Nai Chen is neither a supreme elder nor a holy envoy, so why can he stand next to the Empress? Isn't this against the rules? Even if his cultivation and qualifications are extremely outstanding, the status required to stand next to the Empress is far more than just qualifications. Many cultivators couldn't help but frown, and some couldn't tolerate Nai Chen's presence in that position. After all, being able to stand next to the Empress is the dream of many people, and how could he be qualified with his cultivation and status? There are many more specific things about the imperial mausoleum and the underworld that this emperor cannot explain clearly in the letter. Today, this emperor will announce these things to the world. This is also the first purpose of this emperor's convening of the various sects meeting today. At this moment, the rather cold, but melodious voice like the sound of an empty valley came. Hearing this voice mixed with a bit of cold and arrogant majesty, all the thousands of cultivators from all sects fell silent at the same time. Not only did they look at Chu Qingyu in awe, but their minds were also temporarily focused. Looking at the many cultivators who gradually returned to silence, Chu Qingyu nodded slightly, and only opened her red lips after a long while. What can be written in the letter is limited. Now that almost all the major sects have gathered here, Chu Qingyu also slowly recounted the specific content of what happened in the imperial mausoleum and the underworld. Including meeting Emperor Qiu Yan and Chess Emperor Xiao Wang in the imperial mausoleum, the countless corpses of the emperors behind the canyon, the strange scene behind the door, the things encountered after arriving in the underworld, and the real identity of Men Niang, who guards the Nehi Bridge, is the soul of Emperor Qiu Yan, etc. Of course, now that the major sects in the world are facing each other, many of the specific details of the date with Nai Chen have been dug out. But even so, the cultivators from all directions who listened to all this solemnly were all boiling in their hearts and were stunned. They were just listening to the Empress telling the story, but when they came to their senses, they found that an hour had passed. It was enough to see how attractive the Empress's story was. Even though the cultivators who came to Tianyun Hall to attend the conference were all leaders of various sects and had experienced countless storms, Chu Qingyu's story about the imperial mausoleum and the underworld completely shocked them. For thousands of years, there have been constant disputes on the Lanchuan continent, but very few cultivators have set their sights on the distance. Even if they tried their best to practice and explore the secret realm, they never knew that there were 7 colored source stones on the continent that could open the door to the underworld. They had no idea that there were towns and lifestyles in the underworld that were very similar to those in the present world, and that the dead ghosts were living normally, waiting to go to the Nehi Bridge to the afterlife. They had no idea that there was a netherworld dynasty that ruled over trillions of ghosts in the underworld, and that the one who ruled over the dynasty was the current Princess Yuqian. These things were enough to make anyone's heart throb. In addition to the awe of the unknown existence, they were deeply aware of the smallness and fragility of the Lanchuan continent. If it weren't for the Empress and Nai Chen discovering and solving the problem in time, I'm afraid the entire Lanchuan continent would have fallen into a catastrophe. Wait, Nai Chen. Suddenly, many people woke up at the same time. Thinking back to when the Empress was telling the story just now, they suddenly felt it vaguely. Even though the Empress seemed to deliberately avoid certain topics, the things she talked about, especially after entering the underworld, seemed to show that the Empress and Nai-Chen were always very close, and their relationship also made people start to daydream. That's Empress Qingyu who wrote on the uselessness of Taoist companions, it shouldn't be possible. But, Empress, what is the second thing you want to announce besides the Imperial Mausoleum? Suddenly, someone asked fearlessly.